been discussed. Not entirely sure as yet exactly what has been decided upon. We do know energy agreements between us and China. What we do not, however, know, Rofhiwa Madzena down at the Convention Centre for us, which I'm sure the formal program gets underway shortly, is this expansion. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. It's not about just which countries are applying. As a BRICS grouping of countries, it's not a case of just what the countries are able to offer, those who want to get in, but how do we utilize that going forward? We can't just allow anybody in, but some of the standout ones you mentioned, Algeria because of their oil, Egypt because of their geopolitical importance and their situation regarding the Suez Canal, and also UAE and oil. You were talking about oil earlier, weren't you?
That's right, Gareth. The strategic resources that the countries looking to enter this BRICS grouping is essential for any kind of growth for developing nations if we are to create a powerhouse of a global south. The formal program indeed is about to get underway. 8:45, we are expecting President Cyril Ramaphosa, the chair, the outgoing chair, to give us feedback on the outcomes of this 15th BRICS Summit. Before that, though, we've got Professor Danny Meyer, my apologies, who joins us. He's from UJ, and he'll be engaging us on the economics of this grouping and, of course, a way forward as we look to see which countries make it into this trading bloc. Professor Danny Meyer, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with that very notion of the expansion of BRICS and the countries that have expressed interest in joining BRICS. Why is it significant that these countries would want to be part of this grouping?
Thank you. BRICS is one of the biggest groupings in the world, as you know. It allocates 31% of global GDP, so it's a huge group of emerging countries, and many countries are interested in this. I think up to 40, and a number of African countries see there's opportunities for joining this group. The BRICS grouping could be seen as a political grouping as well as an economic grouping, and I think from an economic point of view, the trade opportunities are huge within BRICS. But we must say that only 6% of the BRICS members of their exports are within the BRICS group. So they are looking outward also a lot. And I must say that South African relationships with the other 4 BRICS countries are quite interesting, because we've got a trade deficit with all 4 the other BRICS countries in terms of our exports and imports. So we import much more than we export to these 4 huge BRICS countries. So there is economic benefits, but we must make sure that we really benefit through this process, and a number of African countries can really benefit when they join this grouping.
And how do we ensure that they benefit, Prof? Because you've just mentioned there, South Africa is at a trading deficit with the other member states, and of course we're importing a lot more than we're exporting. How do we create some form of a trade balance before the introduction of these 20+ countries, if they are allowed into the grouping? How do we change that tide for South Africa? How do we unlock a manufacturing capability that will allow us to export as much as we are importing at the moment?
Yes, the reason why we've got this trade deficit is that we export huge numbers of raw products to China, for example. In China, they add value to those products and we import it back here. So we are in a losing situation. We need to revitalize our manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is one of the economic base sectors which can create a lot of jobs. With agriculture and with mining and tourism, those 4 are the key sectors that we need to try to revitalize. And you know, the other BRICS countries are here for themselves. They're not here to look after us. So we need to have improved trade relationships, trade agreements with them. we need to protect and promote and develop our local industries from mostly cheap imports that we get. We've seen our textile industry, for example, in the past, basically killed off through cheap imports. We need to protect our local industries and expand them, and we must make sure that these trade agreements are to our benefit. The AGOA trade agreement with the US is an example where we benefit, and we know that China are very interested in Africa. They have invested a lot of money into the infrastructure, but now African countries are asking how to support us in terms of our industrial development, manufacturing development, and that is the next phase. China, India, and those bigger countries of the BRICS grouping need to support us to the benefit of African countries.
Prof, should we be concerned about China's economic situation at the moment, slowing down the most it has in the last 3 years, really struggling to shake off the impact of COVID-19, and of course as a result not importing and exporting as much as one would normally see, and of course the GDP figures are also coming down from what we're used to seeing in terms of growth in that country? Should we be concerned as it's a key trading partner with not just the BRICS countries but many others, or is it just cyclical and we might see China rebound in the medium term?
China has been growing for a decade or so at rapid rates. We cannot always understand those higher rates that they achieve. But in recent times, as you say, COVID and the Ukrainian war has impacted them. We should be worried. I think they are a huge partner of South Africa, although I've said there's a huge trade deficit with them. Maybe we must look also at other markets where we can have a better deal and to have our exports. I've just heard on the news this morning, our agriculture and mining sector are really very worried about our logistics, how to get the products to the market. Our transportation system is under huge pressure, and then we get to the harbors. Our harbors is not working well, so we've got a logistics problem, and we cannot be a competitor on a global level if we don't have good logistics. We've already got a productivity problem in South Africa, but now there's another issue, and our exports are under huge pressure. So China is also under pressure. Their president is under pressure with low economic growth. They used to 6 to 7% per year growth, but they are not achieving that. So there will be pressure on him also to turn the ship into the right direction. But we need to look at our own situation. How can we be more competitive? And also our electricity situation with the harbors, with our transportation systems, we are really not competitive at the moment to compete on a global scale.
Very interesting insights indeed, and we ended on the note. Thank you very much, Prof. Danny Meyer, joining us from UJ, speaking around the economics of BRICS and of course its expansion. We ended the note there on China and its growth prospects. We'll be speaking to senior business correspondent from CGTN, a Chinese television network, to break down exactly what's happening on the ground in China and some of the initiatives that have been taken to stimulate the economy. You would have seen earlier in the week the central bank decreased the key prime lending rate for that country in an effort to stimulate the economy.